Hi, this is Bree. Welcome to my garden. I'm really excited to take you guys on a tour today. My garden is doing amazing. I have loved gardening this year and I almost didn't do it. And I'm so happy that I decided to just go ahead and plant a garden, even though I wasn't sure if I was going to be gardening here or at our farm. This garden brings me so much joy, and I hope that this walkthrough today will bring you joy too. And I also hope that you are growing something that brings you joy. I garden in 7A, and our first frost is usually mid to late October. It's honestly though, it varies every year when that first frost comes, but we expect it to come about mid to late October here. And then our last frost is mid-May. We always say after Mother's Day. I prefer a no-till system to gardening, and so this is a raised, I think it is actually named, but I call it a raised row system. And basically we tilled once, we created beds, not raised beds, but just beds that kind of come up above the ground a little bit. And that way all we have to do is kind of clean them up and add compost every year, and then we don't actually re-till them every year. My beds are around 3 foot wide with a 1 foot path. That can vary from bed to bed depending on like just how much we've cleaned it up, or how wide the bed spread throughout the year, or how narrow we made it this year. But that's about the idea, is 3 foot wide, 1 foot wide, or 3 foot wide, 2 foot wide. And I find that works great. I like a little bit wider path than 1 foot, but some of them are about a foot. Having wider paths allows my children, and especially my toddlers, to help, and having really distinct looking paths allows my children to help, especially my toddlers, because then they can see very clearly, this is the garden bed, this is the path. And it's so cute because they come to me all the time. They'll be out in the garden and they'll want to like run to me and they'll say, is this a path? And I'll say, yeah, and they'll run down the path. It's really sweet. I have 23 25-foot beds. I pack them full of vegetables, but I also pack them full of flowers, because flowers in the garden bring me the most joy. I know it's fun to go pick some fresh tomatoes, go pick some fresh cucumbers, but for me, I'm all about the flowers. So one thing you'll notice is that the ends of every single row of my garden have flowers or will have flowers, and there's a lot of reasons for that. The number one being joy. It just makes me happy. It makes my garden beautiful, but it also attracts pollinators to my garden, and it can also repel pests. There's all sorts of flowers that attract and repel. I mean, the list is so long, so you just look up your specific needs if you want specifics about that. I also like to put annual herbs in my garden, like basil. All different kinds of basil. I think last year I had 5 different kinds. This year so far I just have 2, but I'm working on changing that. The first thing you're gonna notice is I have a beautiful arch entrance into my garden, and this year I grew long beans on this trellis. It will be glorious, and it really won't take that long for them to get tall, and then the beans hanging down. It just feels magical to walk into the garden through a trellis. And I personally have found long beans do the best job of getting the trellis covered. I also have, I think, a couple of melon plants here, and some nasturtiums, just to bring some variety and to see what happens. The nasturtiums, of course, are the flowers, and they're for beauty. I actually have 5 trellises all the way down, and when they're covered, it feels like I am in a magic secret garden, and coming out here first thing in the morning just fills me with light and happiness. And my kids too, they love it. On my second trellis, I have loofah. I've never grown loofah. This is my first year, so I have 1 on each side. I know it will fill this in. I have heard that with loofah you need a male and female plant, and I guess we'll find out if I have a male and female plant. But just in case it doesn't fill in, I did add some long beans, and I may be pulling those out if the loofah is so heavy that this trellis can't hold all that. But for now, I'm happy my long bean is actually outpacing the loofah, or it's at least keeping up. One of the fun things about plants that grow on trellises are these little tendrils. This is the part that actually makes me the most happy. Is you come here and you just see these beautiful little tendrils. And before they grab on here, they put them out and they kind of wave around till they find it, and then they link on. It's really sweet. Here's a little tendril looking for a place to grab onto. he'll grab on here. It'll be really cool. Look at the corkscrew. So pretty. Interestingly, this long bean is actually growing its vine up and around rather than putting out tendrils. Here on my third trellis, I'm trying something new this year. I am growing some cantaloupe and some watermelon on the trellis. We'll see what happens. I haven't had a ton of success growing melons or of any kind, but every year I just keep trying and I keep learning a little bit. Okay, so on this side we have cantaloupe. Melons like hot weather and a lot of water. So here we are, and I'm still waiting to see how they pull themselves up. I've been training them. So one thing you sometimes have to do, like this cantaloupe was laying like this on the ground, and he's got a tendril starting to form here. So I just put him up inside the trellis, hoping that he'll reach out and grab. And I might have to do this for a while until he really gets the hang of it. I'll probably weave him in right here. I just found these horrid bean beetles mating in my cantaloupes. Oh, there's another one. And I just like to reach down and squish bugs. I know for a lot of you that's going to be gross, so you can just use a leaf and do it. But I've been doing this so long, anytime I see them, I just kill them with my fingers. Here are the watermelons I'm growing. As you can see, I've been training. Oh, uh-oh, he tried to grab on there. Sorry. And as they get long enough, I'll just weave them in. Oh, he's grabbed on right there, so we'll just let him be. There's a nice tendril on this watermelon. He finally got the hang of what he was doing over here. I just think watermelon leaves are so interesting. Like every melon is so different. You saw the cantaloupe leaves are rounder, but they still have kind of a jagged edge. And then the watermelon, the leaves almost look like oak leaves. It's pretty neat. The same with this trellis. I have long beans growing, and I also have another type of melon called the Greatest North Melon. A friend of mine sent me those seeds. I had some success with that last year, but not a ton, so I'm trying again this year. She has so much success, I'm believing I can do it. So this is called the Greatest North Melon, and it's supposed to do really well in shorter seasons. And I don't have as short a season as her, but typically melons don't do great here because we need just a little bit longer of a season. And I actually have them planted in a lot of different spots around the garden to see where they're gonna do the best. And also just long beans again, because they will do their job on the trellises no matter what. My last trellis here is the one that comes from the bottom of the property up. I have a loofah on one side and long beans on the other. This is gonna be gorgeous. I also just have flowers planted all around the bases and around the trellises to keep things beautiful and inspiring. We're coming to the very top of the garden again, and this is the spring garden, at least the top of the garden is. And because I wasn't sure what direction I wanted to go gardening this year, I planted my spring garden very late, like 6 weeks late. So some things aren't doing great, but I kind of knew they wouldn't, but I wanted to try anyway just to see what would happen. That's the great thing about gardening. It's fun to not go by a formula. It's fun to be like, I don't know if this is gonna work, but I'm gonna try it. I mean, how much is a packet of seeds, you know, or a few plants? It's not that much money. And it allows you to experiment and have fun and see what you can do better the next year, or see what you want to do exactly the same. This is a beautiful butterleaf lettuce mix. It also has a little bit of oak leaf lettuce in it. And the way that you make baby lettuce is you just plant the seeds really close together. So I do my rows here about 3 inches apart, and then I just heavily put the seeds in, and I don't thin it at all. And it creates baby lettuce. Now if I had, oh, that was a basil. I wish I hadn't pulled that. That was a lemon basil. I'm so sad I just did that. Each one of these seeds will create a head of lettuce, but I prefer baby lettuces for a couple reasons. Mainly they grow so quickly, and you can start harvesting lettuce within just a few weeks of planting. Another reason is that we just like the sweet tender flavor of it. It's easy to grow, it's fast, and it's cut and come again. So you just cut it, it grows back. You cut it, it grows back. The deer eat it, it grows back. It's a lovely thing to grow, and I highly recommend growing this. You could grow this on a porch. You can grow this in a small backyard raised bed. You could grow it in pots. I mean, it's just lovely, and it's a way to have fresh food most of the year. This will get bitter, and it will bolt once the season gets too hot, but you could put a shade cloth over it to extend the season. And you can also succession plant it, which means you plant some and you leave a space, and then, you know, a few weeks later you plant some more. So there's a lot of ways to provide fresh lettuces for your salads all spring, summer, and fall. And honestly, you can do some winter gardening with lettuces. You just have to cover them real good. This is my new kale. So I have an old kale plant down there, you'll see in a minute, that we've been harvesting off of for 15 months. And this is the new kale coming up. I actually need to come in and thin it out, but it's doing great. And we just can come in here and eat it. The leaves are more tender, and literally we will keep this growing all summer, all fall, all winter, into next year until we have kale again. And this beautiful plant that is bolting is Swiss chard, which is one of our family's favorites. I actually transplanted this from a different part of the garden, so we've been eating on it this spring, actually through the winter and the spring, and now into the summer, but it's bolting now. I have some new plants coming on. I've had a hard time keeping my plants alive in this part of the bed because this is where my babies like to play, or my twins, I should say. They're not really babies anymore. And so I need to come in and fill in the holes, or at least separate some out and spread them out. I think the twins understand now not to dig here, and we'll get this nice and filled in and have a glorious bed of Swiss chard through the summer, through the fall, through the winter again. And of course, at the end of every bed, I have flowers, and these are mammoth sunflowers. They self-seeded. I didn't do anything except protect them from the twins and watch them grow. Here we have a comfrey plant operation. It's actually my kids, Grace and Justice, my oldest daughter and my oldest son. This is their operation. They are growing comfrey to sell. These are from larger roots, so that's why they came up so fast and are already doing really well. And all of these that are just starting to come up are from just little pieces of roots, just tiny little bits of roots. Comfrey has so many uses. Not only is it a beautiful perennial, the flowers are these pretty little purple flowers, and the plant itself, I think, is very attractive. Not only that, but it can be used around your orchard and around various other perennials to pull up minerals from deep in the ground. Another really cool thing is that you can use it medicinally, for salves, and for healing wounds. Coming into my second row, this is calendula that I grew last year. It just self-seeded all over the garden. I even have it growing in like the strangest places. And I left it here because calendula gives me so much joy. Obviously it needs to be deadheaded. And so one cool thing about calendula is that deadheading it causes it to keep producing flowers. So it'll actually bloom until the frost, and actually after the first frost. Until we get like a real hard frost, calendula just keeps blooming. And not only is it beautiful, and not only is it easy to grow, and not only does it self-seed and do this, it's medicinal. Now, I'm not an herbalist, so I may talk about things being medicinal, but it doesn't mean I necessarily make a bunch of stuff with my medicinal plants. However, two things that are easy to make and use with calendula is tea and salves. Calendula is super good for your skin, heals burns, soothes rosacea, soothes acne. So you could make like an infused oil for your face. You could make a salve for your kids and for yourself. And then, of course, let's just talk about the medicine of the eye. I mean, just having this out here heals me in some way. I don't know how to explain it. Coming out here and seeing just a ton of beautiful yellow and orange, and knowing that it just grew here because it loves to grow, that fills me with so much joy and happiness that it's like a healing salve to my soul. So I love growing it. I've had it in my gardens for many years now. It just keeps coming back in whatever garden I put it in. There are different varieties of calendula that offer different levels of medicinal benefit. I'm pretty sure calendula resina is the one that has like the highest amount of the resin that you want to use medicinally. And that's actually what this is, because I bought it from a girl. Originally I bought the plants from a girl who, that was the variety she grew. So that's what I have. If you remember last year, my sugar snap peas grew feet above my fence, and it's because I planted them on time. So when to plant things can be extremely important. Not all plants care that much, but peas like cold weather, and they do a ton of growing during that cold weather. And then they put out the flowers and they grow peas. Now partly it's this low because my kids eat them off the top and they just love the greens, but mostly they're this low and not doing very well because of the hot weather. These are very small, but they're still delicious. And obviously the kids are out here picking these already. But what's awesome is whenever you give them time to develop, the pea inside gets much bigger and the pod gets thicker and crispier. And it's just like this crunchy, delicious pea. But you can also pick them when they're tiny. When they have so much flavor, you eat the whole thing, the pod and all. This isn't the kind of pea where, like a garden pea, where you'd open and save the peas. This is a pea where it's like a snacking pea, or like for stir fry. This still brings me tons of joy, and it still provides food for my kids, because they come out here and they just eat these greens. And I know the cameraman likes these, so we're gonna give him one. Coming to the end of this trellis, I have some more melons. Remember I told you I have those Greatest North melons planted all over. On this side, I have a bunch of dill that I transplanted from where it grew. So dill easily self-seeds, and it did self-seeded on the other side of the garden from where I grew it last year. And then I just transplanted it over here. It's so hard to come in the garden and film a garden tour and also not do a little work, because I don't know about you, but when I'm in my garden, I just want to touch it. I want to pull the weeds. I want to harvest things. I want to smell things. Oh my goodness, that smells amazing. I want to taste things. Oh, this one would be better. All right, third row, broccoli. And as you guys know, broccoli is one of my favorite things to grow in the garden. There's just no comparison to fresh broccoli out of the garden and store-bought. Broccoli does take a lot of space, so I don't necessarily try to grow a year's worth here in this garden. It's just not big enough to do that, but I do try to grow enough for us to enjoy. This broccoli was planted, like I said, pretty late, so it's wanting to, it did form heads, which I'm really excited about. I didn't think it was going to do that, considering how hot it was. And it did. It formed a beautiful heads, but it's already wanting to bolt, and I have a feeling it's going to be a little bit bitter, which is no big deal, because it won't be too bitter. Probably once we roast it, that'll come right out. One way that I successfully grow broccoli is by covering it with this netting, and that protects it from these little cabbage moths that lay their eggs on the leaves, and then those caterpillars that come out eat the leaves. And I actually do have some cabbage moth caterpillar damage in here, and the reason for that is because I tried something new this year, and I put these clips on here to hold this netting down, and I would come out here all the time and find these risen up like this, so that gave space for those moths to get in there and lay their eggs. Typically, if we do not cover, they will completely eat the plants down, and if we even get a broccoli head, they'll be completely wormy. So I don't want to say that this is unsuccessful. I'm just going to say this wasn't my favorite method of holding on netting. Usually I just use a rock or some sticks on the side, but I thought this would be simpler. Probably a knife would be good, but I'm just going to break them off. It's feast or famine around here with broccoli. It comes and then it's gone. This broccoli will put off side shoots, which means you can keep harvesting it for a long time. However, what I found is that those side shoots are so bitter, they're really not edible. So we'll see. We'll see what happens this year. So typically the way you're going to know that your broccoli is ready is that you're going to have these nice dark green, tightly formed flowers, because these are flowers. The broccoli head, this is actually a flower that hasn't opened, and that's what we eat. So you want to pull it whenever, actually this one probably could have gone a little longer and a little darker green, but I'm afraid it's going to bolt instead of getting darker, and so I went ahead and pulled it. Now this one is getting ready to open and bolt. See the flowers, they're looser and they're starting to open. We can easily still eat this, it'll still be delicious, but I did want to go ahead and get it harvested. So you see the difference in those? This is more what you're looking for. You want some broccoli? You want some broccoli straight out of the garden? Some? Yeah. These heads are a little smaller than the ones that I've usually grown. I might have a few small ones, but usually they grow pretty big. But I know it's because I planted them so late. That airplane is so loud. Is that for me?
Yeah.
You want me to put it in my hair?
Yeah.
I'm just really happy that we even got any broccoli this year. So I'm not going to complain about anything. We're on to another row of brassicas. This is cauliflower. I've never grown it before, so I'm not exactly sure what to expect. Time will tell, and I'll learn for next year. And also in that same row, we have a bunch of beautiful cabbages. They're starting to form heads. And then there's a little calendula that just popped up there. This is a good shot of it forming a head. See how the leaves are folding in on each other? One after the other after the other. And that forms your cabbage. It's so beautiful. And we keep this covered in netting as well for the same reason as the broccoli. My cameraman's back. And at the end of both of these rows, we have sunflowers, of course. Die. Just leave you there as a reminder to all your friends. Coming into the potato zone, I planted yellow butterball. Honestly, I just used what we had left over from last year that had sprouted, and so we just planted it. I actually have some grow bags that I'm going to plant some fingerlings in, but yeah, we just got these in the ground real quick one day and got it done, and I didn't really want to do more than 3 rows of potatoes this year because 1, even if I did 4 rows, I wouldn't be able to grow a year's worth for my family, and 2, I really wanted to focus on cut flowers this year. So you'll see that in a minute. I've actually got I'm gonna have 4 rows of cut flowers because I want to learn how to grow cut flowers. So I designated parts of my garden and gave up other things for cut flowers, which I think was a good idea. It's a good move for me. They're doing well, the plants are doing well. I'm interested to see how well they produce considering I just used our sprouted potatoes from under the house. Now there are gaps, and I think it's because I had the kids helping me and spots just got missed, whole entire huge spots. So in those spots, I planted flowers. And these are scabiosa, pincushion flower. And then I have some zinnias interplanted and some cosmos. Oh, and these are asters here. So I just interplanted them. And when we dig the potatoes out, we'll just be careful. We might lose a flower plant or 2, but it won't be a big deal. Honestly, the thing that is bringing me the most joy in my potato garden this year are the volunteer tithonia, which is Mexican sunflower. It's everywhere. I've had to pull tons of it out, but I've left tons of it too. Here's one. I may have to pull this one out if it shades this potato, if it ends up shading it. Here's a couple. Anyway, it's just everywhere, and I've pulled a bunch of it, and I've transplanted a bunch of it, and then I've left a bunch of it because I have a really hard time killing volunteers. I'm just so proud of them for making it. And I can't even imagine, if I had left all the tithonia in this area, it would be this massive overgrowth of electric orange flowers, and to me that sounds like a really good idea. So I left as many as I could, and probably actually too many. I did hill my potatoes. There's a few reasons why you hill potatoes. One is for support to the plant. They get really tall, and so when you hill them up, it supports the plant. It also keeps weeds at bay. There may be weeds on the edges of my paths, but there's very, very few weeds up around the actual potatoes, and that's from hilling them. Another thing hilling does is it keeps light off of your potato tubers. And as you know, with potatoes, if they're exposed to sunlight, they turn green and you can't eat them because they're actually toxic. Now, if there's one little green spot on there, that's not a big deal. But if half the potato is green from half of it being exposed to sunlight, it's toxic, and you'll either have to cut off half the potato or just not eat it. Well, this is a volunteer zucchini, and it has 5 or 6 little baby zucchinis growing on it. And it has another one that has a blossom end rot. I'm interested why it has that, so I need to read about that. Oh, there's another bunch. Let's see here. You know what? I like baby zucchini, so I'm just going to go ahead and harvest this before I forget about it. And it gets way too big anyway. That'll be a delicious addition to my eggs or to some pasta. Obviously not enough for the whole family, but the whole family doesn't like zucchini.
It's getting late. It's starting to get loud. We got a weed eater starting up.
We're going to work. Alright, we're moving into the summer garden and the corn. My corn is doing glorious. They say knee-high by the 4th of July. Well, it's up to my thighs, so I think we're good to go. It is looking so beautiful. My stalks are thick and strong. My leaves are nice dark green, which is what you want to see. Corn is a heavy feeder and it needs a lot of water, so it needs a lot of nitrogen. So we do fertilize with a liquid fish, and that seems to keep the plants really healthy. I was very sad with my corn production last year, mostly because it got really, really wormy. And the other thing is that I definitely overplanted. I have a tendency to do that. I get greedy because I hate killing plants. I hate thinning plants. But I did it. I made myself do it. And they're about 6 inches apart and they're gonna do awesome. You do want to keep your beds pretty as weed free as possible. Obviously little guys here are gonna pop up. And also this is a sucker. And you actually want to take that off. And a good way to do it is to just twist it off so that you don't pull your plant out of the ground. So you just twist it right off. Because that thing is gonna suck the life out of this corn plant and you don't want it to do that. This year I grew Silver Queen. That is a corn that we've always loved and I couldn't get it last year. And we happened to be at this farm store one day on a date and they had some, so I bought it up right then. It's a super sweet, it's a white corn and it's super sweet and it freezes really, really well and remains super sweet. It tastes fresh as the day you picked it whenever you freeze it. One thing making me super happy in the corn is once again we have some tithonia growing, just like in the potatoes, but it's this. Now I have pulled out thousands of these, but I'm leaving some of them because this is Tulsi basil. That to me is one of the best smells on the planet. It's the best tea. I love to freeze dry this and make tea with it. And this year I'm gonna try to do a calendula Tulsi rose petal mix. I'm still trying to figure out how to freeze dry rose petals. It's not as simple as you'd think. But freeze drying herbs is very simple and I do a lot of that. It's my favorite thing to freeze dry is herbs. So, there are still hundreds of Tulsi plants all over my garden. And as much as I can, I mean I want to keep them away from the base of the corn plants, but as much as I can I'm leaving them because I know that as they get bigger, when I come out here, my whole garden will smell like Tulsi basil. And if you've never smelled Tulsi basil, you are missing out. You smell it and you immediately feel happiness. That's how good it smells. See, here's a patch. That's another kind of basil. I'm gonna keep this one. I'm gonna transplant that one. That's a red basil. This is all Tulsi. And then I'll find that. I'll go back to that lemon basil plant from earlier. Tulsi. Tulsi, Tulsi, Tulsi. I'm gonna transplant that red basil and that lemon basil plant later. Sunflowers and cosmos. We have Tulsi, which will flower. And I still need to plant some zinnias at the end of these two beds. So we mostly have hot peppers in our pepper garden. We do like sweet bell peppers, but we like them fresh. We don't necessarily like them cooked. So I just have enough for us to have some fresh eating later in the summer. It takes a long time for peppers to grow and even longer for them to fruit. So we'll have them at the very end of the summer for a few weeks and it'll be glorious. You can do so much with hot peppers, so we do have quite a few of those. Now you can dehydrate them, you can ferment them, you can freeze them, and it all still works really, really well. All right, so we've got serrano, we've got jalapeno, we've got some habanero, and then these are our sweet bell peppers. Now the deer did take a few little nibbles off the sweet bells, but they have recovered. This one's recovering the most slowly, but this one was bit down too and it's recovered. So we'll see if he makes it. That one's recovered. This little guy, I don't know if he's gonna make it. And then these last ones here are Carolina Reaper, which are the hottest pepper in the world. I'm excited to grow that for Arthur's sake. Arthur and Grace love hot peppers, and the boys, they like them too. And I just stuck these pitiful little eggplants in here. I mean, they were beautiful when they were given to me. But as you can see, the flea beetle have just about destroyed this one, but it's coming back. We'll see. I have never successfully grown eggplant. I've also not tried very hard. So far, all I've done to grow eggplant is stick them in the ground and see what happens. And this is what happens every year. Probably I need to cover them in netting. This poor plant was I just found this plant and it was half dead and I stuck it in the ground. So this is just from neglect. The last bed in the garden is my favorite. I have been wanting to learn how to grow cut flowers for ages, and it feels daunting because there's so many choices. There's just so many options. There's so many ways to do it. Plant in the fall, plant in the spring, plant anytime. So I decided to just commit a couple of my beds in the garden to cut flowers. And yeah, so let me show you what I have. Typically I grow zinnias, cosmos, snapdragons, sunflowers, calendula, and some other herbs and things, and I have gorgeous bouquets, but I wanted to expand my horizons a little. So we have an entire bed. This is my first bed. I have more beds than this. We have sunflowers, then straw flowers, then pincushion flower or scabiosa, and then we have asters behind that. Now, I could be doing this totally wrong. I don't know. I could maybe plant them close together. I could plant them farther apart. Maybe they need supports. I don't know. That's the fun thing about gardening is when you're growing something new, you really don't know what's going to happen. I mean, you can read all day long, but until you do it, and do it a couple of times, you really don't know what you're getting into and what's going to happen and what the growth looks like and what the flowers end up looking like. I mean, maybe if you've seen them in person, but you just really don't know. So I have this whole bed committed to those flowers, and of course I have sunflowers in the front. My boys planted those. Almost anywhere you see sunflowers, my boys rebel gardened me. They put sunflowers all over the place. Of course, I'm not complaining. So the boys put those there, and then at the ends of both of these rows I have zinnias. And then coming over to the bottom row on the other side of my garden, this is a wildflower cut flower bed, and I honestly don't even know what flowers are in there. So I'll let you know once I know. This was just a random mix I bought, and it didn't say what the flowers were. It just said it was a wildflower cut garden mix. So this whole bed, I think it's 25 feet. Some are closer than others. I mean, I really just wanted to kind of see, can I grow them super close together? Do they need to be farther apart? And this is just an experiment, and it's gonna be a beautiful experiment. Even if half of the flowers in here die, it'll still be really pretty. And it gives me a lot of joy. All of these marigolds that are the border came back from last year. They self-seeded. And I just think that makes a really pretty border to the garden. It's also a good deer deterrent. As you know, I have major deer problems. So if my flowers get big enough, I don't think the deer will eat them, but they may nibble at them at this stage. Supposedly the ones that I bought are deer resistant, so we'll see. This bed is also a cut flower bed. I just need to add compost to the top and then I can plant. And then this is my last bed that I need to prep. I'm working on it. I've got some of it done. This is either going to be flowers or it's going to be sweet potatoes. I haven't decided yet. Right now it's a way overdone cover crop that turned into weeds, which is fine. My next two rows, I have my sweet potatoes planted. I do think I want another row of sweet potatoes. Yeah, so these are just plain old Beauregard. They always look like they're on death's door whenever I first plant them. I buy these from this small, I can actually pull this one off. I buy these from this guy at this greenhouse, and I can get 50 for $7, and they always grow well for me. They always do awesome. And I just don't worry about the condition they look like whenever they arrive. And what's cool about sweet potatoes is that there's these nodes on the plant. And what you're wanting is that you plant a few of those nodes, there's one, into the ground. And then it'll root up. And then it'll grow leaves. So it'll take a while for these guys to look like they're going to be much of anything, but once they do, they will explode and it'll be really beautiful. And as you know, last year my sweet potatoes did amazing. I'm interested to see how they do this year. Coming up the garden, we have okra, which I'll extend that down. I haven't quite finished planting that. And then as you can see, I have Tulsi basil and some Genovese basil behind it. And they look a little pitiful because I left them in their little pots too long. But they will recover. Now that they're planted, they'll do just fine. I probably need to go in there and actually pop off all these flowers.
Yeah, they had given up on growing into full plants and said, well, we better make some seed now before we die. Yes. That's exactly what happened.
But they've already perked up quite a bit since planting them. Yeah, so coming down this bed, this is the kale plant that will never die. And so because he's turned into our grandfather kale plant, he gets to stay. Even though he's taking up a huge section of my cucumber space. But look at all this delicious kale, and it tastes awesome. This plant has been here for 15 months. We've eaten off of it the whole time, and we're just leaving it. This side did bolt, but then look at all the good leaves we can still harvest. This one too. So yeah, when it finally actually bolts, we'll pull it out. But for now, we're just eating off of this almost every day. Coming down through here, the little plants aren't up yet, but I planted cucumbers all along here. We'll put a trellis in right here, and then we'll have this tulsi on this side. This is one of the sunflower bombs my boys planted. And I left it, I didn't thin it because I wanted to see what would happen. I'm pretty sure what this will look like is like a bouquet of sunflowers. Because when you plant them that close together, it makes the flower heads be a lot smaller. So I think this will look like a bouquet whenever it blooms. But it's fun. Whenever things like this happen in the garden, I like to leave them. I like to see what's gonna happen, just so that I know in the future. Because if this turns into little sunflowers and it just looks like a bouquet, think about how fun that would be to have all over your garden. Oh no, they do that, man. Where'd he go? Did you see him? So that was a bean beetle, and as you can see, he is killing my bean plants. I'm actually going to let these beans produce beans, and then I'm going to pull them out and replant a double row, and that will be like a later harvest. The cool thing about beans is that they produce so quickly that you can succession plant them throughout the summer and get tons of beans. And you also might avoid like this. So you have a really bad harvest, just keep planting and see what happens. Beans grow relatively quickly. It probably depends on the variety. There's some varieties that maybe don't. This is tenderette. This is what we always grow. The reason we like it is because it grows quickly and it produces these beautiful long tender beans that are pretty straight. Those are great for sauteing, great for fermenting, great for pickling, great for freezing. You can let them mature a little longer, but they'll get, they will get firmer and be less tender the longer that they go on the plant. This is my onion bed. I grew about half the amount of onions that I grew last year, mainly because, like I said, I was trying to make space this year for learning how to grow cut flowers. But the onions I did grow are looking amazing. This year I grew the variety Candy. Since I knew I wasn't growing a whole year's worth, I didn't need a whole year's worth of storage capability. Candy will store like 3 to 6 months, I think, and they get massive. These were planted a little late, so I am interested to see how big they actually get. And one thing I do need to do now that they're nice and thick stems, they've created all their leaves, is I need to come in here. They were planted kind of deep, and when you plant them deep, the bulbs grow under the ground, and you don't want that. The bulbs need to be growing on top of the ground, otherwise they don't grow very big. So I actually need to come in here and pull the soil away and leave it to where only the roots are under the ground, like that. And you have to wait to do that until you have extremely sturdy stalks so that your plants don't just fall over. I'd like to point out that my rebel gardeners planted some corn here. That was not a bird, that was a kid. And they also planted some beans here. One cool thing I want to show you is there are some holes in my onions. It's probably where some kids came in here and ate them and pulled the whole plant rather than just pulling the greens, which that happens. I'm used to it. I'm not upset about it. But what I'm going to do is I'll actually come in here and plant flowers in any of the holes. And it won't mess up anything with the onions. The onions will still do great, and it'll make my garden even more beautiful. You could also like plant an herb in there, one that doesn't get too big. You could plant some beans in there. It's okay to fill in the holes in your garden with something else, because you're gonna have holes unless you're just an extremely efficient market gardener. If you're gardening with kids especially, or just, in a more relaxed manner, you're gonna have some holes and stuff, and that's a really great way to fill in your garden, especially with things that are more time sensitive. Like this onion, I can't plant an onion right now. I can't replace this onion. It won't do well. It's too late in the season. But I can plant flowers, and I can plant beans, and I can plant herbs, and they'll do awesome. Not only that, another benefit of that is you're gonna attract different kinds of pollinators into your garden. You're gonna have all of this variety. It'll deter more pests. It's just really cool. It's just a great way to garden. Once again, a little Tulsi volunteer. Look at how beautiful it is. Look at that Tulsi compared to the ones I almost let die. And this is just some mulching. Arthur grabbed a bunch of stuff out of the forest and just came in here and mulched the end of this bed, which I'm so grateful for, because weeds like to grow. They grow better than the plants usually. So this protects that. And actually, whenever I plant some flowers in here, I will just pull this back and plant directly into the soil. And not only that, not only does it protect from weeds, but this is going to break down into my soil, provide organic matter, improve the soil structure, and improve the availability of nutrients to the plants. Perfect mulch. This is my herb and calendula forest. These beds are actually empty. The herbs and the calendula are kind of on the sides of the beds because that's where they were planted last year. And if you know me, I love giving volunteers a chance. I just can't help it. And all of this self-seeded. We've been eating it. We've been enjoying the calendula. And these beds, 2 of them are going to be carrots. I could have planted carrots a long time ago, but I have had other things I wanted to do. So our carrot harvest will be kind of late. It'll be more of a fall harvest, which is fine because then we can do one experiment I want to do is keep them in the ground through the winter because we did that accidentally last year and it was awesome. And then the other thing we're going to do is store them. So we'll have 2 big rows of carrots, and then this will actually be another cut flower garden. So this is cilantro, and I actually have some smaller plants still growing so we can still harvest that for eating. Something that I have learned to do in the garden is allow my cilantro to go to seed. When it goes to seed, it becomes coriander actually, which is a lovely spice to have in your pantry. And it also, if you don't pull the plants out, this will self-seed itself again next year, and you'll have cilantro in your garden before anybody else. And I don't know about you, but cilantro prices in the grocery store make me want to never buy cilantro again because you get these teeny tiny little bunches for like $1.50 when I could come out here and it's like a weed growing in my garden and harvest it and harvest it and harvest it for free. This is all free. I've done nothing to any of this except enjoy it. Another really cool thing is that the cilantro flowers, it bolts before almost anything else in the garden, at least in my garden, and so it attracts tons of pollinators. There's a honeybee, but as you see, there are dozens and dozens of tiny little flies, tiny little bees, and they're honestly way more prevalent than the honeybees. Honeybees are not our only pollinator. There's a huge variety of pollinators in the garden. Though it's lovely to see honeybees, it always brings me a lot of joy to see them. So this is cilantro that I would still harvest to eat. I have a bunch of those around still. I would not harvest and eat this. Some people might, but to me, I don't like the flavor of that or the texture. And here is a bunch of dill that's self-seeded. The only thing about this dill that I noticed that's different than every other time I've ever grown dill is usually my dill gets like this tall. And none of the dill that I transplanted and none of the dill that I left in the garden has gotten as tall as usual. And I don't know if it's because it's self-seeded, it's a second-year plant, or if just the weather's been different this year. Because yes, we want to eat all of this yummy fern-like leaves, but these dill heads, they make dill seeds. And not only are they gorgeous in flower bouquets, dill seed is delicious to add to. Hey, sweetie. You can pick one. Your ear, don't put it in your ear, behind your ear.
Hey, babies.
You want help?
I'll help. Look at me.
Put it. I think he wants help. He's sticking it in his ear.
Pretty girl.
So the other thing you can use this for, once it's developed the seeds, is for your pickles. So whether it's fermented or canned pickles, you just break this off and literally stick the whole head down into the jar. And you've got your dill seed for your dill pickles or for your dill ferments. So that finishes up my main garden, like the center of my garden where I'm growing most of everything I'm gonna grow. But there's more. I have had this tarped for over a year, this area. And originally I wanted to extend my garden and make this my cut flower garden, but I think it's a good idea to learn how to grow cut flowers before I commit to this much space. So what we decided to do was turn it into a pumpkin garden and a winter squash garden. The vine borers are pretty bad, and vine borers are this bug that bore into the main stalk of your squash plant and kill the whole plant. So I'm interested to see. I would love any advice actually on vine borers because I really don't know how to deal with them, and I would love to be able to grow gorgeous pumpkins and winter squash successfully. We used to be able to do it at our farm. We grew tons of pumpkins and butternut squash every year, and I just haven't really been that successful in a few years. Connecticut field planted here. I've got a variety of the little pumpkins planted there. I've got green pumpkins planted there, white pumpkins planted there, and the bottom beds haven't been planted because those are the kids and they haven't come out here and done it yet. And I may add more down the center actually, because I have a feeling the kids are going to want to plant more. You gonna be a butterfly?
Are you a garden butterfly?
We like those kind of butterflies. Now walk with me to one of my favorite areas of my garden that has begun to just turn out so beautifully, and it's my greenhouse. I still have a lot I want to do, but I'm getting there step by step with my cameraman's massive help. But first let me just show you the outside. It brings me so much joy. I've always wanted a space that looked like this. You know, a little garden shed or a greenhouse, and then just the outside being filled with flowers and herbs and just almost having an overgrown feel, but it's on purpose. So look at these daisies. They're almost as tall as me. I planted these last year and they have gone crazy this year and they make me so happy. We've got oregano about to flower, thyme, more oregano. Isn't it beautiful? I can't wait to see the flowers. Yellow yarrow. Have you ever seen an electric yellow yarrow? That's hard to say. So pretty. I do need to stake it a little bit, so it is staked around here. Arthur built me this beautiful bamboo fence, but I think I need to put something in the middle to kind of hold it up a little. And coming around this edge, now this hasn't fully filled in, but it will. I have Tithonia. Remember, these will get like this big. And granted, they're annuals, but seeing how it's self-seeded literally all over my whole garden, I have a feeling I won't have to plant it again. And then this is hyssop. And Anna's hyssop, it smells like licorice. And it will get nice and big and full, kind of like mint. And speaking of mint, I know a lot of people say don't plant mint in your garden, but I love having mint in my garden. I love that it takes over. I love that it gives this feeling of wildness, but it's actually a contained wildness. And mint is so easy to pull out. Like, if you don't want mint growing right here, you just pull it out. It's super easy.
You can just mow it too.
Yeah, and you can just mow it down. This is actually where my children that started their little comfrey business are storing all their extras so they can come in and cultivate again and sell more. And then back here we have a new oyster mushroom bed, something we've never done before, and Arthur started it yesterday, so it's going to be fun to see what happens there. Continuing coming around, we have more mint coming into the rose campion, which needs to be deadheaded terribly. Rose campion doesn't last all summer, but it will bloom over and over again for a lot of the summer until the plant dies back if you deadhead it. So about once a week I come out here and I hit them all, because as you see, a whole lot bloom at once, so then they all kind of die at once too. So I'll do that on Sunday. I usually like to do that on Sundays.
Yeah, Mom.
Thank you. You want it on again?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, bye-bye, little butterfly. I think this is our first time showing you inside the greenhouse pretty much ever, as far as like since we've been using it. So come on in. We decided to grow our tomatoes in here this year. And the reason for that is because, one, we can control the moisture. So we can control where water touches, we can control how much water they receive. And where we live, it rains a lot. So tomatoes tend to get blight and die. So it just takes a lot of work to care for them and grow them. Another reason we grew them in here is because we may get a longer season out of them, which would be cool. And the reason that would be awesome is because I'm not trying to grow enough tomatoes to feed my family for a whole year or even for a whole month. I'm just trying to grow enough to eat out of the garden through the season. And this allows that, and it may even extend the season. Another really fun thing is all the different varieties we're growing. In the past, whenever I've grown, you know, 50 or 100 tomato plants, I grow almost all the same variety so that I can just have consistency. I can make sauce, I can, you know, freeze diced tomatoes, whatever it is. And this is fun because almost every single one is a different variety. It's really fun, and the plants are looking incredible. We're growing in these 17-gallon pots, and we filled them with soil that we bought. So it's non-native soil, which can also help a lot with blight because blight lives in the soil, and then the water comes down, splashes all over, kicks the soil up onto the leaves, and then you get the blight. We also have some just regular, I think this is the Genovese basil, growing with our tomatoes. We always grow basil with our tomatoes. Not only is it a good pest deterrent for tomato hornworm and other pests for tomatoes, it's beautiful and it smells good, and as you know, basil and tomatoes just go together. I like to make a lot of bruschetta, and I like to make a lot of just like tomatoes and mozzarella and basil with balsamic, so that's why we do that for a couple reasons. So we have Jubilee Orange, we have Lucid Gem, which is a new one to us. We were just driving down the road one day and saw a plant stand with a bunch of tomato plants, and this is the one the lady that started these recommended was this Lucid Gem, so we're excited to try it, and it already has some tomatoes on it. I mean, with a name like Lucid Gem, doesn't that sound like something you want to try? We've also got, it looks like Crazy Cherry, Black Cherry. Over here, we've got Paul Robeson, Mr. Stripey, Yellow Pear, and one San Marzano. As you can see, they're thriving in here. Our plants look beautiful. They're growing like crazy, and then we have them stringed up to the frame of the greenhouse. So every single tomato in this greenhouse is an indeterminate, and what that means is that it's undetermined basically how much it can grow because it's a vine. It's not like a bush. So a determinate tomato would be a bush, but an indeterminate grows like a vine. So you got to give it space to grow up, 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 and we'll prune it as we go. And then the other thing about indeterminates is the fruit comes a little bit at a time. So you'll have, you know, a flush of tomatoes, and then higher up those will ripen, and then you'll pick those, and then higher up those will ripen, and it goes on and on. Determinates that grow more like a bush. So you would use tomato cages for a determinate variety. You wouldn't use tomato cages for these. Those pretty much will all ripen all at the same time. So there are benefits. There are pros and cons to determinate and indeterminate tomatoes, and it's really just up to you and what you feel like dealing with, and you may even just want to grow a variety of both. Look at those tomatoes right there. I didn't even see those yet.
We've used string before, but we're doing a homemade string system. So basically, I just have these little knotted loops on the support string, and I'm just going to take a small string, usually go under a leaf, not under a fruiting branch, and I'm going to tie a knot that's not tight, so it's just creating a loop. I'll use a square knot usually. That's not a square knot. And we'll just walk that up all the way up. I could tie that one up again. Whatever knot you use, you just want a loop that's not tight, constricting the plant. It's just supporting it.
I would say that concludes my garden tour, but it doesn't. I wanted to show you a couple of really fun things. Last year, I was wanting to turn this into perennial heaven. It didn't quite happen, but it's happening. So first we have this really fun pond right here. My yarrow came back here. My oregano came back. All of the thyme that I was using as a border came back. I absolutely love the color on this yarrow. This like blush pink and cream. And I may move it because the soil here is so compacted with roots from that awful river cane back there that, as you can see, this yarrow didn't get very big, but it got a lot bigger than last year, so that gives me so much hope. Black-eyed Susans, I think I just planted those at the very end of last year, so we'll see if they spread. Mint, echinacea, bee balm, more yarrow, and look at this color. And then the coreopsis has done the absolute best. So this may look kind of like a mess, And partly that's because not everything is blooming. So imagine if it was all blooming right now. And it's partly because after seeing the soil and realizing that planting in here was almost impossible, I wanted to see what would actually do well in here before I invested any more time and money in it. And honestly, I am shocked at how well the daisies and the echinacea are doing. So I have about 60 echinacea plants that I'm gonna start filling in. And then I am going to probably this fall, maybe, I need to read about it, separate the daisies out and then fill in with that. And then I'm gonna get some more coreopsis and fill in with that. So since those three things are doing so amazing, that is what I'm gonna focus on to fill all of this bed in. My goal isn't to have this look super landscaped, but I do want it growing actual plants and not just weeds and river cane. So I'm pleased. I'm pleased with the first year. There's a lot more to do. And if this was rich, dark soil that didn't have river cane roots literally making a mat underneath the soil, this would be exploding in color right now. But it was fun. It's fun to see what's working and what isn't. This is the last thing I wanted to show you. As you guys know, I split green stalks in half and give them to my kids as their gardens. I find that green stalks are the best way for young children to have a garden. They don't have to weed it. The care is minimal compared to like a regular garden bed, and the results are glorious. So that's Justice's, and that's Brighton's. And the girls each have one, but they haven't really planted much in them yet. If you're looking for a great idea for giving your kids a small garden that they can manage easily, I highly recommend getting a green stalk and then just splitting it in half or in fourths if you have really little children. You just want them to have a little tiny space. Thanks for joining me today on this garden tour. It is actually getting super hot outside now, even though we started very early this morning. And I hope something in this garden inspires you and encourages you and brings you joy today. See you in the next video.